7 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order, starting with roll call. Larry?
Here.
Brent?
Here.
Mary?
Here.
Jane?
Here.
Jeannie?
Here.
All right. And Ashley, of course, is traveling this week. Notice a meeting.
Meeting was properly noticed.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Then second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, will you please stand with me to do the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Salutes and recognitions. Does anybody have anything they would like to?
I do.
Okay.
I'd like to salute Kara Vonk. She runs the Girls Who Code program. That's a lesser-known program that is teaches girls from 3rd to 5th grade about coding. It's a precursor to, and I believe they can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's part of the robotics program. But also, the other reason for the salute is she added the middle schoolers this year. It was just 3rd through 5th to provide them an opportunity. And she had a celebration last month and awards, and then the girls got to present their coding. She exposes them to a couple different platforms depending on their level within the program. So it's a really great program, and I just kind of wanted to give her a shout out. I think it's a lesser known. I'd like to encourage girls to try it. It's the ones that are in it love it. So just something fun.
Great, thank you.
I would like to give a shout out to the staff at PLE because their spring sing was dynamite again. I mean, like you haven't lived until you'd heard 4K students sing Bon Jovi.
That's awesome.
With zest.
And the weather was beautiful, so
The
that's
weather
always
was
nice.
beautiful.
All right, Larry?
So a big shout out to Anthony Pizzo and Katie Spadoni for the Asa Clark promotion program held on the football field. They did it in about 45 minutes, which was amazing, but I think it was very, very nice event. A little on the chilly side, but it was nice to do that. And then since Mr. Brian is here, and Brian and the staff that put together the high school graduation ceremony, again, I really appreciate, I think, a lot of the fact that you get more student involvement and participation in the planning and the development and presenting the program that night. And thanks to having Dad, Katie there to kind of talk that night. And it really made sense to have him be the dad last night, or that Friday night, rather than superintendent. So thank you, Brian, for even allowing our superintendent to be dad that night. So great job, by the way.
Brian.
I had a lot of people talking about certain videos floating around town. Perhaps, did you take one?
I did not take.
Oh,
a
you
video.
didn't take
No,
one?
No, it was
Of
Sarah.
the chug?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
wife,
Yeah,
yes.
Sarah.
I had a lot of explaining to do. Like, what was going on?
It's gone viral.
It has gone viral. All right. Anybody else? Do you guys have any on staff?
Just with all the events that happened here last week, our custodial crew, our grounds crew, our maintenance staff, everybody was on board. The campus looked great. We had thousands of visitors on the campus, and everything looked great. So they did a fabulous job again this year.
I have a whole slew of names, which I piggyback off of John's, and I already sent these to, this list to Julie, so she has them. But along the lines of, this is really, John Stangler had sent this my way, but I want to give voice to the names of everybody. It takes an awful lot to get the campus ready for the end of year, and so I have a bunch of people to recognize, including Olivia Gill, Sue Four, Rick Moncada, Peyton Wunschel, Carol Cabino, Andy Fleischman, Irene Burmeister, Zachary Wisniewski, Sue Hendricks. In addition, Pat Singer, Deb Wunschel, Randy Kernatz, Mary Grunwald, Ben Graham, Rich Eels, Jim Bleha, and Adam Ebele for all the work that they did with getting campus ready and looking so good, including, as I'm making my way to, I think it was the soccer game, the one that we had against Brook Central. They were, a couple of our grounds people, including Rich, were down on their hands and knees picking up little scraps of toilet paper from the senior TPing of campus, just to make sure our campus looked great. So, to John's point, you know, really those people take a lot of pride in how our campus looks, and it showed, and I really appreciate that. I too want to recognize Brian and Paul I thought they did an amazing job. I was with some parents after graduation, and one of them just said, you know, I just never really thought about what a production this is. Like, there's a lot that goes into that, and those guys did a great job, as well as Susie Mattson for all the work that she did. Another person, spring sing, promotion, graduation, you name it, would be James Sevens. That guy was running cables and sound checking, and of course was my right-hand man with the little dance party that we had during the middle of graduation. So he helped me out there. But James did a ton in the last week or so of school to make sure everything ran. And then Miranda Kozlik, all the videos for the end of year production, as well as the senior class walk and the pictures and everything that Miranda does, including, and it's very tedious, putting every graduate's name and if they have a university or something into that digital marquee, which is not the most fun piece of technology that we have to work with. So Miranda deserves recognition as well.
Thank you.
I have one other one to add, and this was on Saturday night. The girls' soccer team, unfortunately, they lost at Whitefish Bay, but if I understood correctly, they had 20 wins, and that was their first loss. So It was a sad way to end the season, but, I mean, they played very hard, and it was a good recognition for the girls' team to have success in soccer as well. So not quite going to state, but.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Anyone else? Good? Okay. You're standing alone. The cheese stands alone. Do we move on, go back? Are you in contact with them, or?
One said he wouldn't be able to make it, and the other one I
Just don't know? Okay.
I think we move on. We, appreciate our valedictorian, salutatorian, and the speeches that they made and their academic record, but they had two chances to come here to be recognized, and it didn't work out, so.
they're busy, that's part of being valedictorian, salutatorian, being involved in things, and so, certain perspective. But anyway, so congratulations to Chase and our Iman. It was a real pleasure to work with them, as we prepared for all of this and practiced all the speeches and all that sort of thing. They were really great bunch of, a couple of young men. So high hopes for them. They're gonna go out and make some positive impacts on the world around them. So congrats to them.
All right, and thank
Thanks,
you
Brian.
for being here, Brian.
My pleasure. Happy summer, everybody.
You too.
You too.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. We had our minutes from the previous meetings, the policy committee and the regular meeting on May 22nd. We had some correspondence in our packet. There were no gifts that we need to approve of. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on to business affairs. Jane?
So we met tonight and we reviewed check registers. There were a few questions on fees and computer licenses. We reviewed the financial report and we're anticipating being within budget. There are no real surprises there within the financial reports. And then the topic tonight was on efficiencies. And John presented us with some examples of efficiencies within our school that, and one of them is transportation. We're one of the few schools that, because of our dense population in a small location, we're able to run 2-tier routes, which allowed, we eliminated 3 bus routes today, so that, we eliminated 3 bus routes this year. So that was one example of our transportation efficiencies. We looked at our spending per pupil compared to other schools in Waukesha County, and we're one of the lowest spenders in the county per pupil. Also one of the lowest spenders per student with disabilities. And that is due to our facilities all being on one campus and sharing services. And then lastly, the fun chart on utilities demand and how we monitor our demand charges and ways to avoid peak times and drop our consumption. So with that, I would take a motion to approve the treasury report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approving the Business Affairs Committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Jane. Nice job. All right, moving on to new business, we have the curriculum calendar renewal. Danielle?
Oh, so annually, I review the curriculum calendar to see if there are any revisions that need to be made due to any changes. There can be a variety of changes, right? There might be a law that changes that has us do something, or there might be a need that we see based on our data to move something forward or backwards. We certainly had to respond to COVID, and so we actually didn't have to make any changes last year. However, I am recommending some changes in this next cycle calendar that I presented there, and the memo sort of explains it. Most primarily, it is to make sure that the budget stays pretty balanced. Math and career and tech ed are expensive curriculums typically because of the equipment with tech ed and things of that nature, and so to move them around better balances it, along with just needing to grandfather in some of the math curriculum. We're only really going to be going into year 2 of it, so just haven't had enough time with that yet to fully see the full impact of that. So happy to take any questions you have on that. I didn't receive any questions from board members prior, but I do appreciate Jane just reaching out on it.
Anybody have any questions for Danielle?
Yeah, I just appreciate the recognition that it would be better on the budget. Also, I like that you want to attain more data on the math changes, and so I thought it made a lot of sense to move it.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the curriculum renewal calendar as presented?
Move to approve the curriculum renewal calendar as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Mr. Gahan, property and liability insurance.
Thanks. So in the packet, you have information regarding our renewals for our liability and our property coverages for the year. The largest insurance policies that we have in the district are generally related to employee benefits, but just as important are these liability coverage, which include the largest of which is our workers' comp premiums, workers' compensation, property insurance, umbrella coverage, covers all of our exposures, our loss exposures outside of those employee benefit coverages. We have split these with 2 different groups that broker the coverage for us for several years now. The first is with M3 Insurance, and that covers a majority of the liability policies, including the workers' comp that they represent, EMC Insurance. The total policies for that placement is $201,440. We separate our cyber liability, our property liability, and our equipment breakdown and crime liability with Gallagher Insurance, or representing us as a broker. That total for those policies is $115,785. One clarification from the memo, the coverages for Gallagher include property, equipment breakdown, and crime. This year, the cyber liability policy is moving to M3 with a different carrier. Are there any questions about the attachments or the inclusions?
Wait, say that again. So cyber liability is going with
M3.
M3.
Yeah, the total dollar amount is still 201 with them.
Okay, the motion has cyber liability listed under Gallagher, so
Right,
should we
it's
not
just
say
listed,
that?
yeah.
So we shouldn't say that?
No.
Got it, okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions for John?
I was just a little confused with the math at first, but that, the 28,000, the dividends, it's not guaranteed.
Right.
Yeah, so-
Dividend isn't issued until after we have an audit of our final payrolls and our final experience for the year, so that will come in the fall, following the year of the policy coverage.
Okay, so if you look at our printed outline that do you guys not get that? Sorry. Okay, so do I have a motion for the M3 proposal?
Motion to recommend approval of the insurance renewal with M3 per the summary of coverage proposal in the amount of $201,440.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jane. All in favor of approving the M3 proposal, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, Gallagher? So you're going to leave out the cyber liability piece.
Okay, I'll do it. Recommend approval of the property equipment breakdown and crime policies with Gallagher in the amount of $115,785.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the Gallagher proposal, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, John. Moving on to SWSA agreement.
Yeah, so the Southeastern Wisconsin Schools Alliance, we've been a member for quite a while. I'm not sure when we started, but quite a while.
Long time.
And it's a organization that really gives us a voice and influence on, with our legislators. The group represents approximately a third of the students in the state of Wisconsin. Larry's been extremely active with SWSA. The meeting is actually tomorrow morning. They're going to be putting me forward as the next co-chair for the executive committee. So it's been a very strong group. We have a lobbyist that works for SWSA to advocate for public K-12. The dues to be a member of SWSA are listed and have not increased. From the past year, it's $3,200. I think it listed here last time it increased 6 years ago. So they haven't increased the dues in 6 years. I'd take any questions that you have, but I'd seek your approval of our renewed membership. Larry?
I can add a couple of things to it. What makes us unique is that the makeup of the group that attends the SWSA primarily, but any board member is open to attend. But it's made up of a board member and a superintendent. So that's how it kind of works in terms of that a board member, superintendent are at the meetings. And then when they do the co-chair, chair kind of thing, it rotates between being a board member, superintendent, board member, superintendent. So I did serve as the co-chair, chair at one point, and then now Mike is up for potential serving as a co-chair of that. So I think it does work. We have a relatively strong executive director for the program with lots of background, and we work in conjunction with literally the other advocacy groups in the state of Wisconsin, WASB, the WASD, Wisconsin Rural Alliance. I mean, they work really hard to work together to be able to accomplish things, and that's how it goes. So, and I think it offers some value for $3,200 a year. We get a pretty strong voice out of it, so.
All right.
All the meetings are all virtual now, right?
Except for tomorrow.
Tomorrow's because it's.
It'd be virtual and or in person, so.
Yeah. So they have a little bit of the in-person, but typically virtual, yes.
Where are they holding the meeting?
Tomorrow will be at the Elmbrook School District office at 3555 Calhoun Road, which is just a little tad south of Capitol Drive. So if you want to go, it's just a little ways south, but it's 355 at 7:30 in the morning. It'll start and it'll end by 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I know
So-
it's 7:30 in the morning.
What's that?
I won't be there.
That's why I don't attend.
They'll be voting on me
Yeah,
tomorrow, but I
normally
won't
it's
be
been
there.
virtual for quite a while. I
Yeah.
think there is a virtual option out there for tomorrow as well.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, if you want to join us or join me, then please join us.
Yeah, it's always open to any. John attends regularly those meetings as well, because there's a lot of business managers that are very involved.
Okay. Do you have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to approve the SWSA contract for the 23-24 school year as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance contract for the 23-24 school year, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, John, you're next. The owner's rep contract.
So tonight we come to the board with a proposal to bring on an owner's rep to assist in the development of the facility master plan. We did this back in 2016 when we approached a facility master planning process to make sure that anything that we were going to survey or anything that we were going to propose as projects to move forward on, that we had solid estimates of what that project would look like not only from a design standpoint, but also from a cost standpoint. So to do that, you engage in pre-referendum services, it's called. This is long before the board will ever make a decision as to whether or not they want to proceed to ask a question, but you're doing your due diligence, and that's what this is all about, is due diligence. When we engage with the owner's rep at the start of it, it does a couple of things. We utilize the AIA forms, the American Institute of Architects, for the bid processing to get these two contractors under contract. Doing that eliminates a lot of negotiating on the backside as to what that contract would look like, but it also gives you an apples-to-apples comparison of what is being submitted. There's a lot of leeway to build profit into those proposals, and having somebody who works in the industry on your side to be able to decipher that out and make a solid recommendation for you was very beneficial the last time around. We saved much more than the cost of the contract in the ultimate cost of the project itself and having that completed. So our proposal would be to move forward again with this, with some of the projects that we've identified already that have come out of the facility master planning meeting in April, out of strategic planning in May, and from our long-range capital improvement plan, and projects that we know are on the horizon. They're going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. So this owner's rep will facilitate the development of the proposals, facilitate the bidding process, go through the contracting component, so we're not assessing outside legal fees to be able to develop that final contract, accessing them. And then finally, work with the district through the first couple of pay cycles. If we do have a successful project and we implement a project, they'll work to tie back what was in those proposals to the actual fees based on the submittals that are coming in through the companies to make sure that everything is in order. Like I said, in the past, the savings from items that come through that way has more than exceeded the cost of the contract that we've seen. So, are there any questions?
Yes. John, is this something that we are going to do prior to extinguishing the current debt from the referendum we have?
The outstanding debt that remains from the project that was completed in 2016 is still, it's outstanding. That runs through 2038. This proposal, if the board determines after getting all the information and getting feedback from the community that they want to proceed and have a proposal go for vote to the community, if it's successful, that debt would be layered on top of the existing debt to be able to manage the payments.
Do you have a figure for that at this point?
No, that's why we
Okay.
go out for these contracts, because we can get some solid numbers based on where it's at right now.
Thank you.
Question, so the firm that we used previously, this is not the same firm?
This is the same firm.
Same firm, so
Yep.
they've got familiarity with our campus, they understand what was part of our previous referendum and all those components to it. So I know that there's one thing that's in there relative to some of the tech ed areas and things like that. I mean, those are things that were identified, but as a board, we'll get a chance to kind of really scrutinize the extent of that and what that means and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, so part of this contracting process it's a conceptual design. It's that first element of looking at any project. When we started, this was not the vision when we got into conceptual design the first time around. It'll be meetings with stakeholder groups, meetings with Danielle on the curriculum side to decide what are the needs that we have in a facility to support the curriculum, not just now, but 10 years down the road. And then the architecture firm will develop that into a concept. And then the construction firm will give us a price of what that concept will cost. That all that information comes back to the board, then the board can make the decision, yes, we think it's worth pursuing, or no, let's look at that price tag and bring it back down, or what we need to do.
Do you have a price tag for that piece?
Do I missed the question.
I'm sorry, John. Do you have a price tag for the piece you just described?
So the building, typically the owner's rep is where your cost, it will be, and that's what we're acting on tonight, the price on that. Generally, an architecture firm or these construction managers will do what they list as pre-referendum services. All of those fees are only charged in the event of a successful referendum. So I can give you an idea. The last project, I want to say it was $34,000 was a pre-referendum services.
Right, I'm remembering that as well. Excellent, thank you, John.
All right, do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion.
I move to approve the owner's representative contract proposal with Building Solutions LLC in the amount of $13,500 as presented.
Second.
All in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay, so Miss Jeannie Watoon is going to talk
Oh,
us through.
We got one more.
Do I skip
Calendar.
Calendar.
one? Oh, I'm sorry. The calendar. Mike, this is you, I assume?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
I think you just moved ahead because we're all tired of talking about the calendar. Because we brought this one back like, I don't know, 25 times now. So at any rate, have before you some minor revisions to the 23-24 school year calendar. This is out of the ordinary for us to be talking about a calendar this close to the next year. Just to kind of step back, it's an interesting one because, as you know, the state does not allow us to begin school prior to September 1. September 1 is, this coming year, is a Friday prior to a Labor Day holiday weekend. So that means our first day of school, short of starting right before holiday weekend, which we did not think made good sense, would be September 5th. So you're already pushed in there. It really gets us into that second week of June. Complicating that is that historically we've always tried to wrap up on a Friday, kind of aligning high school commencement with a Friday night event and kind of bringing the whole district along. So that gets us to in the existing calendar, a June 14th finish, which is late for us and is definitely later than the majority of the districts in the area. We've heard feedback from some parents and certainly some staff that aren't thrilled with that late of a finish. So a key component of this recommendation is to do something that we've been talking about for quite some time, and that's to move to early graduation for seniors, which is a pretty common practice. Lots of places graduate their seniors about a week early. So a component of this would be to have commencement be on June 7th, which would be prior to the end of the school year. It's not an issue from instructional hours. Instructional hours don't apply to seniors like they do to other students. If you think about it, seniors can even graduate at semester if they've met credit requirements. So they're a different animal as far as that piece goes. Jane had some stuff that she asked questions, including, is this going to conflict with state track, which can be a real concern. Next year, state track meet is May 31st, June 1st, so it's earlier. So in this case, it doesn't conflict. In a lot of years, it would with that weekend. So that works out well there. And so we actually did some creative things. So we do start elementaries with those Great Start conferences. So those aren't full student contact days. Those are opportunities for the parents and students to have those one-on-ones with the teachers. So in this revision, we add in September 1 as a Great Start Conference Day for the elementary. The impact that has on the end of the year is that brings a day off the elementary calendar, off of the 14th, gets you back a day. We also propose eliminating an additional vacation day that we added into May because, we tried to kind of fill that week out to get us to that Friday the 14th. So for all K-12, that May vacation day would be eliminated, so that brings another day off. So the creative thing is that elementary would technically start a day earlier because of that Great Start Conference Day on September 1st. They would also technically end a day earlier on that Wednesday then, which is the 12th, whereas the high school and middle school would technically end on Thursday, the 13th. However, really for students at that middle and high school level, the last 2 days of the school year are academic career planning conferences. So you have Great Start conferences in elementaries to start the year. Middle and high school, you have academic career planning conferences to finish the year. It also provides some time for makeup exams if that stuff's needed for any high schoolers. So really, for those middle and high school students, they're still done by that time. It wouldn't change. We'd still have our half-day program on that Wednesday. The difference would be that that elementary staff would be done and off for the summer. After that Wednesday, middle and high school staff would still be wrapping up just with those conferences on that Thursday. So that's unique and a little different, but it does get us back to kind of 2.5 days into that second week versus having to push all the way through to that Friday for 5 days when many districts around us would be out. And I've had good feedback on making these changes. We didn't want to make dramatic changes to really try to push hard to get to the previous week. That would have caused significant revisions with short notice to a calendar. I know how our families plan well in advance. It doesn't have a major impact on elementary for start of the year, except that their first student day will then be that Wednesday, which is September 6th, instead of Thursday, September 7th, as it would have been on the previous one, because we moved up that Great Start Conference day. So that's a lot of moving parts. If you have questions, I'd be happy to take them and then seek your approval for this amended calendar.
Do seniors not have to take the finals then? Is it the teachers just deal with that? Like,
The seniors would still be accountable for the same level of assessment that the teachers would deem appropriate for them. You just, especially the block schedule, it's really not that difficult to get those assessments in early. There's not, and Danielle could speak to this as well, there's not a lot of traditional cumulative big semester exams like maybe you and I experienced in high school.
Projects.
yeah.
And so they'll just have them present their projects first, and then the rest of the class can present after the seniors are
Yeah.
gone, just to a smaller group.
Yeah. And when I was principal previously, we had the same setup, and you'll have some classes that are split. You might have some juniors, some seniors. The seniors are just done early. You get a smaller group in there. It's pretty doable.
Anyone, other questions?
Yeah, just because I think, obviously, we do this and we try to do them in advance. But if you look ahead, because we already have a posted calendar for the 24-25 year, you're going to bring something back soon on that one too?
Yeah, I was going to bring that tonight as well, but I think ultimately what we need to look at, I just want to get some more feedback on the calendar. I want to do some more comparing to some of our neighbor districts, because some of them I'm curious as to how they're getting out as early as they are. And some of it is pretty clear. Some of them are doing like half-day PD days and different things that we used to do but don't have an interest in doing anymore. But I do think ultimately the recommendation that is the cleanest is to move to a Sunday graduation. My previous district, where I was high school principal, we always graduated on Sunday. It is completely clean from any conflicts from any sport because the WIA doesn't run events on Sundays. And you just hate to see any senior who would have a athletic competition interfere with their ability to participate in commencement. That said, that's a change. We've always been a Friday night graduation. It works next year. It would not work most years. It would for sure probably conflict with the state track meet. We always have kids at the state track meet. But I think we want to have a little bit more conversation on that one. But yeah, I do intend to bring that one back as well.
And maybe one other thing, just to clarify the process. So for the changes that you're making to the 23-24, who were the stakeholders that you reached out to, and what kind of conversations did you have regarding that from parents, faculty, students, whoever?
Yeah, it was some board input. It was administrative team, and then I had the principals bring that back out to their staff, the superintendent advisory committee. So that was the group, again, making minor changes So we had an opportunity to get some feedback from staff on that. We have not taken this out to parents yet. The intention was to bring it forward to you for the change and then inform on that, because this was, again, it's getting kind of late. So if we're going to make some tweaks, I think we need to make them and move on. And then for we would have the ability to involve more people. And maybe, for example, the Sunday graduation, I think that's something we could survey parents on and do those kinds of things.
But in essence, like, I mean, the Thanksgiving holiday, the whatever, December holiday, and then like the spring break, those are kind of like locked in. Those didn't change on this calendar?
No major. The only change is moving back the end day, which I don't think creates issues for probably almost anybody. And then that elementary start day moves up one day from September 7th to September 6th for when those students are in person. And then it eliminates that May vacation day, which is almost never there. It was just a filler because we were filling out the week to get to that Friday. So being that that's the one that's the furthest out, it's the most notice, and it's not one I don't think families would typically be banking on to have a weekend out of town or those things, because we don't usually have that extra day off in May. So we tried to be very careful and not make too big of changes.
I'm assuming that most parents would not object to starting on the Tuesday versus the Friday, because it always seemed weird to me that, hey, we've got the 3-day weekend in there. It's like, oh, yeah, one day of school. It's like, what's up with that? So,
Yeah, and you just been off for 3 months, and you come in, you have one day and then a 3-day weekend. I don't know what our attendance would look like on that day. Maybe, I'm just not sure, but some districts are doing it, so. But that was just, I think when we talked about it here, we didn't think that was the most productive way to start.
The only, and the other change is the October 26th to a virtual day. Is that?
That was that was noted in there. It's a good, thank you for bringing that up, Jane.
Is
So.
That's all grades, right?
Yes, so what we did this year was we implemented a virtual time to, so students would be doing virtual work and then teachers were doing conferences. So it was really to create space for parent-teacher conferences where parents could come in during the school day. And then what we've worked to do for the next calendar is to align that K-12, so it's on the same day. It's not elementary does it here and secondary does it later. So I don't.
We had gotten feedback from parents that they liked the virtual parent-teacher conferences because they could easily at work take a 15-minute break to jump on to their parent-teacher conference or whatever, versus trying to fit it in the evening when they have so many other activities going on, or just having to skip it altogether, and stuff. That the virtual was a preferred by our parents as well, so.
So it's still an instruction day. We don't lose a day of instruction. It's just, it's a virtual instruction day.
I think, because didn't we do, I know we added a virtual day last year for middle to high school, right? Is that what we did? And I think we did conferences
Yes.
on that day.
Yep.
And so that's why I was clarifying that this virtual day is actually all grades.
Yes.
Yep.
But I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was an add to that calendar.
Yeah, I don't think we had it listed previously.
So just one other comment in terms of that. So, like this, in '24, the graduation day will be the Friday, June 7th.
Correct.
And then if it's in 2025, there's Friday, June 6th. So,
But that won't work because that's state track that year.
So that's why he's saying maybe we try a Sunday.
So I'd probably go June, I'd probably recommend, and again, this is when we can have more conversation about and move it to Sunday the 8th. And then
what
that,
is the-
Go ahead.
WIA doesn't have track on Sunday.
No,
So-
but in the sense, I mean, this year we don't.
Oh,
or the-
why didn't we do it this year on a Sunday?
No, but I mean, in the sense that the 24 is on that same kind of weekend.
but it's, for whatever reason, the
Oh.
track meets earlier next year. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It's May 31st and like June 1st on state track next year.
But in '25, it's back to.
It's
June.
back to, it's usually that weekend. I don't know why it seems earlier that year, next year. So Friday works next year. So that was kind of consistent and clean and easy to do, before getting into the Sunday conversation, because that's a real shift. So that's why I didn't bring that calendar forward, because I think we wanted to have a little more conversation about moving to a Sunday and see how that feels to the community and
I
to
move
staff.
to approve the revised 23-24 school year calendar as presented and
Very good. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the changes to the 2023-24 school year calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now I'm jumping over to Jeannie.
Okay. Policy number 5200.06, high school grading procedures. We looked at this one a short time ago, and there were quite a few, we got comments from quite a few parents and students that were not happy about the fact that we had listed honors as being 3.5 and above. So we went back and we looked at districts surrounding us, and most of them surrounding us have their honor roll goes down to 3.0. So what we decided to do is we went with a high honor roll with distinction, honor roll with high distinction, honor roll with distinction, and then the honor roll. And that way the kids who did have a GPA over 4.0 kind of got their high distinction. We did run it by Brian, and he's in favor of it.
And I did have some questions from Jane on this one about honor cords and who qualifies for that. Does this change anything? Cords are kind of a separate piece, although it can be influenced certainly by this, because this is by term or semester in terms of where they make that honor roll cord. Stuff for graduation is based on CUME GPA. Historically, that's always been a 3.5 or higher because it was high honors. And Brian says, it's really not formally documented or written in any kind of handbook or anything like that. That's just kind of what's always been done. So there's going to be some evaluation on that honor cord thing and what makes sense.
Question? If
Any other-
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mary, question?
You're proposing to move it down, drop the lowest honors down to 3.0?
Correct.
Okay. If you have the lowest honors down to 3.0, what percentage of the student body is now honors?
So the current policy is 3.0 and then 3.5. So this one is really adding a 4.0 level and above. So it is the existing, it doesn't change anything existing. It just kind of makes a distinction mark at that 4.0 and above. I would have to pull the numbers back up.
Yeah.
I don't have them. I have them back in my office.
It's a good question, Mary, because, that's what kind of drove this in the first place. So Brian Sniff had met with his principal advisor with students, and they recommended kind of raising the standard because it's been a 3.0 and a 3.5 historically. So then the recommendation was to make it a 3.5 and a 4.0 for honors, high honors. But then there was a lot of concern that other students were not going to, we're going to feel devalued and not recognized for their work. So in essence, this now reinstates the two tiers that we had before, and then adding that high honors with distinction at the 4.0 plus, considering all the weighted courses that we have. And we did present at the time those percentages that you're asking about. It was something like 60%.
It's high.
Yeah, it was about 60%. It was,
It's a lot.
I can get you the exact numbers, but it was around 60%.
That's what I'm remembering.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's high.
Is that striking anybody as odd?
I mean, that's what led to the original proposal to change it to 3.5 and 4.0. But then there was feedback from parents and some students, so. It's now.
And really, we're not adding to what we're doing right now. We're starting at where it is right now, where it was this year, and just adding the high distinction.
That was the change, because then we had the feedback, and then we're kind of charged by the policy committee to look at a different option. This was what was presented then, back to the policy committee that was approved for first read, was bringing in that top tier with that high honors with distinction to recognize those different levels of achievement.
Compared to other schools,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we did get that. We have that comparison data from other districts as well. Brian had pulled that as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Policy number 5600.01, all we changed on this was a couple of grammar changes. It was our emergency school closing. Questions on that? Policy number 5700.06. The only change on here is we changed district administrator to superintendent, which is what we've been doing on all of our policies as we've been renewing them to make it equal across all policies, so we have the same verbiage. 5500.07, student fundraising activities. We changed down at the end, last sentence, parent to parent guardian, and we decided that we needed to add the non-discrimination paragraph on our student fundraising. Questions on that? Okay. Policy number 5500.08, accident reporting. We eliminated, if you look at the first or the second paragraph where you're supposed to call EMC with a phone number. We decided that really didn't belong. Phone number does not belong in a policy. We put it in procedure.
Are procedures part of policy?
Second page,
Second,
right?
yes.
So it sort of begs the question, why is procedures in policy? This is a policy manual.
Historically, there are policies that the board wants procedures developed for, and then those are really just included as an addendum in terms of the procedure that the board is made aware of, and can direct. Procedures are able to be amended administratively as needed without board having to act and approve, but the board's always notified if the procedure related to your policy changes. So it's to have the procedure included. So any community member goes and looks up a policy, they can see what is our procedure as well, because it's a direct addendum. And it helps all board members see how that policy is operationalized. So that's the purpose as I understand it.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Did you say you wanted the phone number on the procedures page, or you don't want the phone number on there?
We do not want the phone number. We just said to call the EMC on-call nurse.
Maybe also partially an answer to your question, Mary, is that if it's combined in there, it's a one source to look it up in terms of they can go to the policy and then they have the procedures that they need to follow. So it makes it a little bit more convenient for people when they need to address some of those things that are in the procedural details, which is much more of the step by step that they need to follow. So it's a one source then.
Are the procedures, we don't develop the procedures, though.
No,
Administration develops procedures and brings them forward to the policy committee. And then it's presented to the board.
But they're administrative procedures.
Correct.
And this is a board policy manual. So if I'm a parent, I wouldn't be going to the board policy manual for procedures. That would seem odd.
Well, I would say the history of it is that the procedures are developed really at the behest of the board. The board will direct that they would like a procedure developed. So the policy committee would say we'd like to see a procedure developed. That procedure is brought forward for feedback from the board. So it is, the administration is charged with developing a clear procedure to implement the board's policy. So there's always been that communication and that relationship between the board's work and what that procedure looks like, so that there's not just some procedure that the board members would be uncomfortable with.
But we don't implement that procedure. We implement the policy.
Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah,
I'll have to
I mean,
find out
'cause-
what those are.
Well, sometimes the procedures directly affect, so there are procedures that do rise things to a board level. So for example, we recently used this with resolving stakeholder concerns, right? Where level 4 rose to a board level, and so you are then implementing a procedure from your policy. You're a level of that procedure. So sometimes those procedures do directly involve the board. Yep, you're welcome. Good question.
That was everything, Jeannie, right?
Yes, no. Are there any more questions?
Okay, moving on to personnel issues. I was super sad to see Shelley's.
Yeah, that one came in
Yes.
this morning. So we have 4 resignations for you. We have Brianna Pinter, 5K teacher's resignation, Katie McManus, 4th grade teacher resignation, Kylie Sewert, who, interesting, you recently just approved her hire, but then she recanted and withdrew as an employee. So, but because you acted to hire her, we have to act to accept her resignation. And then Shelley Dolby, we received that communication this morning. I believe they're moving to Colorado. They made some decisions as a family. So let's turn the page on that. But
Alaska?
what's that?
We're not moving to Alaska?
Their son is.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if you're gonna move to Alaska.
I don't know, how is Colorado much closer,
It's
maybe?
a little closer.
That means a little.
Competing maybe in
He
Colorado when
may.
it comes down to the
Yeah.
lower 48, that's where a lot of competition.
Okay.
Because he's
Maybe.
cross-country ski team for
I'm not 100% on
his,
that.
his university,
All
so.
right. Okay, so those are our resignations, and then we had employments.
Yeah, do you want to?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, we have to vote on individual.
I think you could accept them as a group.
Okay.
If you would like.
I think that'd be great. So, I need a motion to accept the resignations.
Move to accept the resignations as presented, with all the 4 names, so you put that in there. That's it.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to approve the resignations as stated, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right, now employments.
So I'd seek your approval for 2 hires. Natalie Matheson, 5K teacher at PLE, and Melissa Krogman, who would be grade 6 ELA at Asa Clark.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the hiring of Natalie Matheson and Melissa Krogman.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to approve the employments as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
There are no leave requests.
Okay.
Before we go on, can I just
Yes.
ask one question? Do we know at this point in time how many open positions we are still actively recruiting for?
Well, now we have a dean of students, so that's one that's open. I believe, is there one special education?
Special education due to that resignation.
Yes.
And then 4th grade teacher who I'm seeing finalists for this week.
Oh, yes.
And secretary.
Right.
That's pretty good,
So
given.
4, yeah,
that's-
4 with
That's good.
one probably being taken care of.
Yeah, we've been, I mean, our principals have been moving things right along. Colin's been doing a great job getting things posted right away so we can try to get out as quickly as possible. Yeah,
Candidates, generally
yes.
speaking.
Is what?
There are pretty good pools of candidates, generally speaking.
Especially those elementary positions, the numbers have kind of returned closer to what historically I think we had as high as like 170 for one of the positions, so.
Okay. Moving on to board goals and operations. Our calendar's a little light now. We've been super busy, but our next meeting is June 26th, and if I remember correctly, that's the one.
Yeah, Danielle and
Good
I
job,
will
Adam.
be with a team out in Washington DC, so it'll be the John Show, so
I feel like there should be a little dance with
be
that.
gentle.
It's a light agenda.
A little
so
dance. A light agenda?
A light
So
agenda.
you should be able to manage.
Oh! All right, then our next regular meeting is on Monday, July 10th, and we will be having both the policy committee meeting and the business affairs meeting before that. Then, as we discussed earlier, the WASB Summer Institute is July 14th, 15th. Larry is going. Anyone else? Great, Bren.
And
And
John is
John is
speaking.
presenting,
Yeah,
speaking.
John's
Great. And then we have the annual meeting that we set for Monday, August 21st. We'll have the budget hearing at 7 and the annual meeting at 7:30. I'm sorry, I should have done this. The regular meeting, 6:30, and the business affairs will start at 6. So that'll be held in the auditorium. All right. Any questions or comments on our upcoming activities? All right, and then Julie included the board meeting calendar for next year. So if anybody has any comments or questions on that, please forward them on to Mike or I.
Jane did have a
I-
couple, and if you wanted to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
had
those.
A couple, I was just looking at the November meeting and that it falls on that, Monday, after Thanksgiving. I really don't feel strongly about this. I was just throwing that out, whether it was, whether it was just a challenge to get board packets out, with the holiday in between there, but, so I was kind of referring to Julie and Mike as to whether those could be shifted up, but,
So you're suggesting like the 16th and the 20th? I mean, sorry, the 6th and the 20th? Because they're 13th and 27th right now.
yeah, is that what I said, Julie? The 6th and
The 6th and the 20th is what I
Yeah.
had. Now, the one thing with the 6th is that then it's only 1 week between meetings from your end of October. I mean, you can do, you are also able to do a meeting with, a month with one meeting. There's nothing, you are able to do that if that's something you would like to do. It's, again, whatever, as a board you would like to do, you can keep them as is, of course, whatever you would like.
because that was my other question, because I had looked at the list and it had audit report, so I had referred to John, and we discussed this in business affairs about the audit report coming to the board in that November meeting and whether shifting those days would be a problem. And he said it wouldn't, because normally actually it ends up in December, not in November, so that's actually one less thing on the list, that we could just have one meeting in November, but, I was just thinking of the administration too, and that Thanksgiving holiday and getting that out, and it's a no school day, but then it is a professional development day, so you have to be.
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking of us. I mean, we're of course willing to do whatever is necessary. Danielle, do you see any issues? Because that's,
Yeah,
we kind of get into November with some of the data reporting and those
Yeah,
things.
the only thing that gets weird is if, theoretically, DPI will unembargo things for that October 23rd meeting, which is what was this year. We have seen in past years that sometimes data doesn't get unembargoed until November. So my only concern would be is if it all of a sudden gets unembargoed like October 25th. Now we're waiting until like November 20th before we can really kind of have a full discussion. I could certainly send a report. We can certainly give you the data, right? But as you guys know, it's hefty and detailed, and if there's any questions, right, like it would be a while before we could all sit and talk together. That's not to say I can't meet with people individually if there's questions, and certainly send a report. So we can make it work either way.
And if you did one date, it could be the 13th, it could be the 20th.
Right, yeah.
But Jane, is your question more about the staff availability or time to get the agendas out and materials distributed prior to that meeting?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, but I
Yeah.
mean, if they're willing to do it,
I'm fine with leaving it, yeah.
Okay.
It was just a point of discussion. I just wanted to throw it out
good,
there, yeah,
good.
yep. Because then my other one was, I felt bad because the January 15th falls on MLK, and that is actually a no school, no students, but then I was informed that the administrators have to work that day anyway, right?
It is a work day for us, but we
Okay.
could certainly move the meeting to the
So
22nd
that
as
one's
well.
fine too.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing a few things out there
Yeah.
that I noticed.
Danielle, is that packet you referred to one of the larger ones?
Yeah.
When you spoke of there being a gap between the time you get the data and the time we have to respond, I was a little excited about that. I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's informational for you guys. There's nothing you have to act on. It's really just, it's a report that we provide, and we provide all the context for it. So it's nothing that you guys need to, take any action on. So from that standpoint, you don't have to necessarily worry about understanding all of it to take an action, but it does take a little while to digest, yes.
Yeah, Mary,
So-
there's a series of meetings, October into November usually, where there's there's a substantial volume of data reporting from a district assessment, and then, of course, continuous improvement reports from the schools and from all the departments. So those are some of the heavier meetings during the year.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is like, I'm now getting all of our assessment data from this spring, but I can't talk about it or say anything to anybody publicly or you. We can only work with it internally until DPI unembargoes it, so it's embargoed, which doesn't happen until sometime late fall. So it's an odd piece.
Will you be able to explain to us what that means?
The embargoed,
Why that's there?
I don't have a great explanation as to why DPI has decided to do this. That's the way it's
Well,
always
You
been.
just live with it?
Primarily,
Yeah.
it's for them to be able to make sure there's no errors in the
Yeah.
data. They create the school report cards, and so they have a period of sending those out to us, and then we check our data and then can get back to them with any errors that we see. And then they kind of fix it on their end. So it's giving them time to make sure that they can synthesize it all and create accuracy, but there is a fair amount of time in between.
We have just a couple of other, maybe just minor edits, either Julie or Mike. So in the January meeting scheduled for 1:15, oh no, not 1:15. I got the wrong date. So it's actually the December meeting, 12:11. There's a reference to WASB and SBA presentations. I think if we put it in there, because I think we're gonna move to potentially the cause session.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, then we should have the date of the COSBA, whatever it is,
Conference.
conference in there as well. So just some minor cleanup.
Good catch, Larry.
Yep.
I always want to say rock the Casbah.
I know, me too. It's hard to remember- That's
So
hard
I
to
did.
remember what to
I
call it.
apparently I didn't just want to, I did say it.
I am intrigued by the idea of one meeting in November. Can we maybe just discuss it and look at the agenda items and see? Circle back to it?
Yeah. It is your calendar, so we can do whatever you guys want, so.
Yeah. I don't want to have a marathon meeting, though.
Right.
I want a John and Stacy meeting.
Jordan looks like he's in favor of what you're talking about too.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Those are some good ideas. Good catches, Larry. Okay. Moving on to our survey. All right, so thank you for participating. I John blasted it and had to get a reminder from Julie to tell you every year. All right, Mike, do you want to comment on any of this?
Well, thank you for, I just want to say that I respect that this board has established a commitment to self-evaluation, whether it's how efficiently you run meetings or just in general, your boardsmanship, with the now 2 assessments that you've been doing annually. So I did not have major things that jumped out at me specifically. So I don't have specific comment. I just would turn it over to your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, our answers were fairly consistent.
I think the one that seemed to see the most change was board members had an adequate opportunity to discuss and understand the impact of decisions before taking action, and that went from a 3.9 to a 3.5. I think that was probably the biggest discrepancy.
Share about that?
I mean, it's interesting because the one above it, the item above it, avoided extensive debate on non-critical details. That one was slightly down as well, going adequate time. So,
And yet, I want to say, I feel like we have gotten better at asking more questions and getting more discussion in that's relevant to us as board members, but also to those watching the meeting from home. So so that was a little baffling to me.
One of the things that's on here is comment about, and I think we tried to make a good effort with that tonight in particular, because we had it was us stating the questions at meetings for, so people that are streaming at home or that may be in attendance to a meeting are aware of board member questions prior to a meeting. So I think there's been an effort to give voice to those questions at the meetings, which I think was a process improvement.
I have two questions on the confidentiality. First one would be, Mike, why is the DA report confidential? The second one would be, I forgot to ask this, Jane, sorry. Why is the check registers in the executive part of the board docs and not the public, or not both?
Some of it is past practice. That's the way it's, I mean, the DA report is really just executive content that's meant for board members. There are things there that certainly are not confidential by nature. You know, there's things like gifts that we received or my calendar or notes that we have. It's just another communication tool that the intended audience has been the board. Sometimes there's things in there that may be sensitive. Could be a personnel item or something of that nature when in and of itself would be specifically confidential. So it's executive content and that you're the intended audience for that in relation to the upcoming meeting. So that's really been the intention of it, Mary. So it's not necessarily that the items in there are specifically confidential, like in a legal sense. And John, I don't know if you want to talk about the check register.
Yeah, check registers, we generally, and this is past practice, where we make that available at the meeting. So the copy that I carry along is for anybody who would like to review that at a meeting, we make it available that way. That's just been a practice, a longstanding practice with it.
So if somebody asked me to see the check registers in the public, I am free to do that, which I think I am, but I didn't quite understand why we don't make it a practice to put it in the
Well, typically,
public section of the board docs.
yeah, what I would suggest, Mary, is that if you get a records request, which is what that would be, is that you would direct that to the administration, and then we'll comply because we handle the records requests and make sure that we provide publicly requested records. I mean, there may be, I don't see any of this with a check register, but sometimes there's things that need to be redacted, but we'll take care of the process of providing that, and then we can keep a record of what those requests are, and we can make sure that we're responsive to those.
Why would that have to go through a public records request?
Well, just the process of handling it and making sure that we are complying. If a member of the community makes a request for a record, first of all, is the record something that is confidential? Like,
No, stick Mike with
Yeah.
just the check registers. That's the finances
Yeah.
of this board, it's the finance of the district. Why would any of that not be immediately available to anyone who asked for it?
again,
I could give it out.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you could not give that out. I'm just suggesting that from a process standpoint, if there's a request for records and information, typically that goes through our office, we process it. Those are things that would be given versus because there could be format, could be the type of report that people are looking for, those kinds of things, just for consistency, as opposed to 7 people handling requests for information. The hub for that, it would be typically through the administration. We're the ones that usually manage those records requests. So it doesn't mean, just because someone's asking for information, we kind of include that in this umbrella of records requests. And we have been the ones that have always provided that information as opposed to 7 individuals handling that piecemeal.
Then why wouldn't we just put it out on the public side of the docs?
I mean, that's something that the board could choose to have us do.
I think from my perspective, speaking of the check registers, I mean, it's a common practice. Not every business puts their check registers out there. So it gives us the opportunity then to ask questions and discuss. So I actually prefer the process that we have right now.
We're not a business, we're a public entity, and every single record, as Mike just suggested, is actually an open records, subject to open records request. There's nothing about the check register that should be private at all. And I would prefer to see it go out on the public all the time. Always talk about transparency, and that's a biggie.
Yeah, that would be, I'd defer to the board as to what you would like us to do. If you'd like a change in practice with that.
Thoughts?
So, I mean, one of the things, obviously, if there's something that we want to kind of take away from this survey, is there anything that we would want to put into potential future board goals or superintendent goals? And I was just kind of like doing a quick summary. I mean, there were maybe just a couple of areas where we had a decline in terms, or a decrease in terms of the score from last year. Otherwise, many of them were staying exactly the same. And I think many more were actually improved from from the 22 survey that we took. So, I mean, I think that maybe we did make some improvements. We didn't realize we made some improvements.
Yeah.
But they have made adjustments in terms of the results coming back, so.
You know, as for the check registers, I do appreciate that we as a board have the ability to go in and view those first and present our questions to John. But then certainly after that, if the community wants a copy, there's no reason not to give it to them. But I do think there's something to be said for us being allowed to review them and come up with questions or whatever prior to releasing it to the public.
That's a good point. Mary, has anyone asked you for access to them? Have you had the interest expressed?
Yes, and it never dawned on me not to, until I saw it in the executive section. And then I'm here now with the question. If we do, so I take your point, Bren, if we do that, when does it go out to the public? I mean, the board docs,
after our
public section
meeting.
Yeah.
is
After
really
our
sweet.
meeting.
And you just put it on there after the meeting?
We could, if that's what we want to do.
I mean, I don't know the logistics of that board docs thing. We could add it in afterwards? We could move it from executive to public after the meeting?
Yes, so it's just like we publish anything else, we sure could.
That would answer certainly my concern, and I think it would catch Bren, because we would have seen it then, and it would have gone through the approval of the business community, the committee. Satisfaction.
Do we want to do that?
Yes, other than since this was not a specific agenda item, we can't vote on it or anything tonight.
So we
but if
should,
it's something
we
that the
discuss it,
administration
yep. We can
Can
put it on
do,
a future
then
agenda.
they can do it, so.
We could try it next time and see how it works.
Do you think we do need to vote on it, put it on an agenda?
It's a procedure.
Good question. I don't think it necessarily requires action. It requires just really your consensus that that's what you want to do.
Mr. John, research it and do it.
Now, let's take a look at it, see logistically what that would mean. You know, one thing that comes into mind is some of the, if we have reimbursements for students and things like that, where that stuff would have to be redacted prior to being published, so. But let us take a look at that, and we can give you an idea of what it would take to do that and modify the practice.
And we could bring it back under board operations for final discussion at the next June meeting. For sure.
I have one more comment. I mean, would it be sufficient to just post our financial statement instead of the detailed check register? Because I have to agree with John, there's some sensitive information on there that we don't want the entire community to look at. So, I mean, he's got a financial statement. Would that be a better thing to post? Why would they have to have the full check register? I mean, a financial statement details that all out.
I think the better question is, why aren't they entitled to it?
Because they're sensitive.
I'm not aware of
student-
any, you'd have to show me, I'm not aware of anything that's,
So
that,
parents
that's
get
that
paid for
detailed that I could
transportation
identify
costs.
a person.
Yeah, there's names right on
There's
them.
names on there.
Right on the check registers with amounts and what it's for.
But why would they be, if they're not medical, the only ones I've seen are transportation. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, there's reimbursement, there's.
For
student-
transportation.
There's
No,
student
there's-
fees they're reimbursed for student fees. There's.
There's reimbursement for activities and
Yeah.
sports events or
Yeah.
things.
There may be an assumed expectation of privacy for people who are making those kinds of payments, and they may
But we,
not.
no, we're backtracking because just 10 minutes ago or 5, Mike, you said it's absolutely their right to ask in an open
But we do have-
records.
But then it requires redaction.
Right.
I'm not comfortable putting out a check register with Jane Doe's name on and how much money we reimbursed her.
Well, and some of those reimbursements that we're making for projects at school, those are minors. We can't have their name out there.
I don't know.
And
Public
again,
money.
Mary, I don't mean to put you on the spot on this, but, so what's the objective? What are you trying to get to? I mean, and I kind of agree with Jane. I mean, I have no problems with our financial statements, because those are the documents that are built, and we also have like a public audit of those. I mean, those are all things that reflect the where and how we spend district funds in terms of doing that. I mean, a check
Easiest thing
register
to
is a
read.
level of detail
Right.
that would be like, oh, well, Larry, bring in your checkbook, and we're gonna take a look at it, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so.
That's the easiest thing to read for the public. The rest of it, you have your check registers, and everything comes from that. So everybody's getting summaries of this. They never see this. They're having a whole lot of debates in Madison about how to get DPI to make a system that is more transparent, the financials, to the parents, to the taxpayers. And we sit here right now and we're holding back that data anyway. We're not being transparent at this level, and they're up there going all through all these hoops to try and make it more, I have no idea what they're thinking they're doing up there, but it's not easy to read these things if you don't know what the basis of it is in the first place. They're very easy to read when you look at budgets if you knew what came underneath. And if all we're ever showing people is summaries and stuff, that tells them nothing.
I have to disagree. I get more information from the financial statement. I mean, we can see where we're at, we can see where we are with spending. The check register needs a lot of, we put a lot of discussion, we put questions in. I mean, there's teacher information on there, so I think that sharing the financial statement, it does provide them with the information that they need.
It doesn't tell them what they're paying for. Gives them categories, which are useless.
Whenever you have information or records that do have personally identifiable information, you just have to be careful about that before you go ahead and release it. So, we're happy to get more information and take a look at that and bring it
Yeah,
back to you for
I think-
discussion,
yeah,
Mary,
that sounds good.
to answer that question, and
Yeah.
maybe just do a quick legal check to make sure, because last thing we want to do is upset people or put something out there that we're not supposed to,
Right.
and at the same time, I respect where you're coming from, Mary, with wanting to maximize our transparency, because we know that that's important.
We could possibly alter the way we list those checks.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at that and
Yeah, thank you.
add it for more discussion at the next one.
Thanks, Stacy.
Moving on to the strategic planning debriefing and update. Mike gave us there's a lot of tabs.
Yeah, a lot of links here.
Yeah.
So really, just kind of a follow-up to the event that we had in May. We have, kind of in the spirit of the transparency piece that we were just having a discussion about, the information that that we received and the priorities that community members identified in that process have been posted on the website. We've emailed that information out to participants. We had 84 participants this year. We had 105 people sign up. So good participation, maybe not quite as high as last year, which was really high, was really strong last year. Good feedback for us to take a look at. I'm certainly interested in any thoughts or comments that you have. The next step is for Leadership Week, which happens in July, where the administrative team will kind of revisit this information as we redraft those 6 process owners in those 6 areas of the strategic plan. They will redraft their tactical plans for year 3 of the 3-year plan, which all comes to you in the fall as we kind of go into that last year of the plan. So be happy to take any feedback that you might have in terms of how things went when it's kind of fresh, if there's any improvements you'd like to see made.
Sorry, Stacy, but a couple of quick comments anyway in terms of what's there. And when I think about having done this over the years, there are sometimes some things that show up on some of the comments that, quite frankly, I would put in the just do it kind of bucket. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of like filter through those and say, okay, I mean, I think the one that I looked at was vegetarian options, okay? That's something that's very doable in terms of within the cafeteria kind of world that we have. So I think hopefully we could maybe to address that as, you know, again, just categorize items into things that we just do it and then other items that are more in the strategic area. I also looked at some things that maybe were, you know, maybe those are little yellow, red flags that are kind of out there on the horizon. One of those topics I know that we addressed already in terms of the racism and bullying. And so those are things that I know that you've got some action plans that are scheduled to start with that. And that's a great way to do it too. I mean, those are things that we should be kind of trying to stay ahead of. And then there's other stuff, and again, I'm keeping bringing up board goals, superintendent goals. When we get that meeting kind of scheduled and brought forward, is there anything that we would turn into a board learning session out of this, in addition to things that you might add to the strategic plan kinds of initiatives that we're going to work on, or supplement the strategic plan topics that are there? And maybe one other comment or so, I think that I saw a lot of really good things come through with the components that we have with the WCTC, the dual enrollment kinds of things. There were comments related to the UW Green Bay and the credits and those things. I mean, if there's a way we can kind of continue to build on those things and make sure that the public understands how we add the value to each student's experience. And Jane and I were privileged enough to sit right behind Chase Barrow, right, in terms of the salutatorian, sorry. I mean, and these kids are leaving here, going to the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, he couldn't even keep track of how many AP courses and classes and credits that he's taken. I mean, but he's probably leaving here with a good 25, maybe 30 credits. And those are things that I think we really need to appreciate and acknowledge, just like the kids that are dual enrolled in terms of WCTC. So those are things that if we can highlight and promote and do some of those good activities related to it. So, and then the other one I felt really good though too, even though we've put some into it, there was still the identified needs for the behavioral health, mental health issues that are out there. And boy, that's a biggie topic in my head in terms of how do we deal with that and how do we continue to work on that part of it. So hopefully that's something that, again, we've put effort into it and money into it. And I think I just saw something in the state governor's budget that, I mean, they're potentially moving forward with some additional funding for that now too. So I think we're on the right track in terms of what we're doing with some of those things. But, so yeah, just do it kind of items, areas where we add value to the student's experience, and then addressing and supporting some of the things that we're already doing with the behavioral health, mental health kind of stuff, so.
Thank you, Larry. And I like that distinction that you made because we often talk about that. We'll get feedback on all kinds of things. And some are in that operational, just do it bucket where just things we can do that are not, because we always say formal strategic plans are something that takes us somewhere new. It's more about innovation. And then but through the process, we get ideas for improvement for operational items that we can make better. So that don't require us to have a big 3-year action plan. It's just actions that we need to take. So, and from an innovation standpoint, like, for example, we know, even though we're going into year 3 of a 3-year plan, we know we can't really wait to the next plan to have something in artificial intelligence, right? So Rachel and Danielle are already kind of working on adding in a tactical plan related to artificial intelligence. So there's some things that just have to evolve even on that innovation side right in the middle of the plan.
I want to piggyback on Larry's comment. The one thing that really stuck out for me that goes along with the behavioral was resilience of students. I thought that was that's a good something to move towards in relationship with the behavioral mental health was the resilience, and I that really stuck out for me.
Thanks, Jane.
I thought it was interesting that some of the strands, especially around the CTC, had high marks from the community and staff and nothing from the kids. You know, they didn't, like the community and staff was high on, we need to bring back the trades more and things like that. And the kids didn't say anything about it at all.
Which students happen to be there.
I think it
you
depends on
know.
what student,
And even the kids that were there were probably kids that were earning college credit, but I don't even know that they fully appreciate when they're here what that means.
Yeah.
right,
So
right.
I could understand that they aren't
Yeah.
putting that high up on their list of.
But I remember in one of my groups, I had one student who told us she had all these AP credits and dual enrollment things. She's doing the dual enrollment with Green Bay, and she had no idea where the tech ed department even was in the building.
I went to a graduation party this weekend that they were really excited that their graduate had an opportunity to participate in the tech ed programs through WTCC, and they weren't going to have a high school graduation. They were waiting for their college graduation because they were that excited about the program that they've been introduced to and the opportunity for that.
I'm going to bring up something from, I think, the last meeting, because at the last meeting, I had a little brochure from the WCTC Dual Enrollment Academy graduation. It was, I believe, the first time that they did this, in terms of that they had the students, that, as they said, they were getting this dual enrollment kind of a celebration even before they had graduated high school. So, I mean, any recognition that we can do for students that are participating in these programs, and they had it listed as being programs for the all areas like automation systems, building construction trades, electrical apprenticeship programs. And I know that somebody made a comment about the recognizing apprenticeships in completion, tool and die, welding fabrications, IT system specialist, school of health, pre-nursing kinds of things, criminal justice, early childhood, and firefighter, emergency medical technician. I mean, so if there's any way we can kind of build on that for recognizing students in some way, shape, or form too. So, and again, just highlight them some way, shape, or form, so.
Going back to mental health, you know, it does resound from one year to the next because, you know, Ashley and I have talked about it, mental health, medical, depression, especially anxiety, it's not going to go away. And in fact, I read an article today that talked about how the levels of anxiety in our students, especially in the middle and high school areas, are only going to rise. And, you know, at what point will funding just not be able to give us the amount of people that we need to work with it? So it goes back to that word resilience, which is teaching our kids how to deal with their anxiety, their anger, their insecurities. And I guess my question is, I'm wondering if our coursework through SEL, is there a way we can look at that and specifically this next year try to put some resiliency content into that?
Yeah, and we've had some programs, what was the one at ASA was brought on?
Character Strong.
Yeah, Character Strong was brought on this year. It is one of the areas that, you know, so when we do the conference that we're going to with our team in at the end of June, there's some strong things in that lane that give us some ideas as well. And that might even been where they picked that one up, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's not where we picked up Character Strong, but it is where we got some, basically our whole action plan from was this, this conference in DC that we're going back to in June. So yeah, we'll be revising and updating our care action plan. That's part of my strategic plan. So I just made a note of that to make sure that we particularly highlight that resilience piece and we can pinpoint that and highlight that a little bit more, so we know exactly how often are we touching it, where are we touching on that, and, how are we tackling that idea?
Yeah, because anything like that is, I mean, this whole mental health and wellness piece, resiliency, those kinds of things, it's complex, multifaceted. There's no check the box. All right, character strong, we're good, right? It's gonna be, it's about what positions of support do we have in place, what levels and tiers, what are the different kinds of messages that students receive, what is, the culture of, the building, those kinds of things. It's that product of 1,000 conversations, so.
And I think we're in a good position to make sure that we're really earmarking some of those changes, particularly at the middle school with our health curriculum revision that we're in right now. And, I know I've mentioned it, right, but in November, when I bring forward new courses, or October, right, we're looking at adding in some more health components into the Phy-Ed class in 6th grade, because currently 6th grade doesn't really have anything health-related. There's a 7th grade elective that is about student wellness that we're looking at, and then an 8th grade standalone required health class, which we don't currently, right now it's just basically 2 weeks each semester that's a part of their Phy-Ed class, and that's just simply not enough time to dedicate to the topics that we know our students are struggling with and need support in.
Yeah, so there's curricular strategies, there's programmatic strategies, there's support from like student services personnel. It's having those site-based school psychologists, and then they might create groups and those kinds of things, so. It is important, but there's a lot of pieces to it.
How do you feel like we've been doing with PD about stuff like that for the staff?
Good. I mean, we had a lot of sessions this past year for staff on, wellness, both for themselves as well as for their students, that were popular. So, it was on almost every single PD day. There was a session that staff could participate in. So I do think that staff is feeling better in many ways about things. In other ways, I think they too are recognizing the sheer volume, and they're not licensed professionals to deal with, not all of our staff, right? Obviously, our student services are, but our regular teachers aren't. And so I think they still feel like this hasn't been a part of their job before. And how do they incorporate that? They recognize that it's not going away as well, but they also want to make sure they serve their kids the best and feel understandably uncomfortable.
And there have been universal trainings, mental health toolkit, trauma-informed care, suicide prevention. So there are universal trainings. When I was a teacher back in the 90s, way back when, we did not get trained.
We just did it this morning.
Yeah.
We had our trainer
I don't
come
think
in
we
this
had that
morning.
much anxiety back in the 90s.
Yeah, it's far worse, far more now. You're right,
Is
Mary.
there an effort, or is there knowledge of a link between the amount of social media these kids get and the amount of anxiety that they have?
Yeah, the technology is the social, there's been to your point, a lot of articles I've seen recently published about that, and that's something we always believed was one of the major drivers of it, and there's just more and more evidence all the time.
So one of the things that John had in his budget was increasing the amount of social media as a goal. What would happen if we started reversing the amount of social media in this school and see what that did to the anxiety levels?
But that social media is really about informing our community and the adults, and the kids aren't going on our social media
Yeah,
accounts.
students don't have access to their social media accounts.
And they don't have it
For school.
while they're in school.
Yeah, that's just.
So it's really a PR thing for us.
Yeah, it's communicating what is happening in our schools to our families.
I would like to research the possibility of providing childcare. We've got it down to one night. I think we would open up a whole population of people that haven't participated in the past if we could provide childcare at the strategic plan.
It might afford us the ability to get some different voices.
Some of the younger families. And maybe even more of the staff, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's, to a certain age, it's definitely doable even with student volunteers. It's when you get to the real littles that then it gets a little dicey in terms of what you can provide, and you probably need licensed daycare providers for probably 3 and under kind of ages and those kinds of things.
What kind of childcare are you talking about, Stacy? I thought we
During
already
the
had that.
strategic planning meeting, so that parents can drop their kids.
Oh, one day.
Yeah, just the 4 hours of the meeting
Okay. For that event.
for that
Yeah,
event.
for the event.
Yeah.
But the numbers, what did you say, Mike, 80?
84.
Of the 84, it's less than 20 that are from totally outside.
No, but I'm talking about, the parents that come are typically, historically, parents of older children. The elementary parents, typically, we don't have a large draw from them.
Right, but 20 is not a large draw from any crowd.
You mean?
There's
we had-
20, there's 3,000 students here. We had 20 people here who are adults, who are not in some way connected to the school, out of the 80 that came.
I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about parents that are connected to the school that have younger children that don't come because they don't want to pay for childcare. I'm not talking about community members. I'm talking about teachers and parents of the kids here.
It's a
But
barrier that can be removed.
We didn't draw.
Yeah, that's something that we'll,
I just want to look into it.
yeah, look at it as a strategy. I think it's something we could for sure try. And next year's the bigger part of the process. So, you know, there may be, typically we've had 2 community nights in that year. So,
Oh,
in addition to, the question I would have is, do we need 2 nights? Do we kind of get, I don't personally know that historically we've done the 2 nights and we've basically broken like the SWAT and the department strands up over 2 different nights. I don't know that we get that much more than doing it in one night, and I want to respect people's time. So that's something we can talk about. The other piece is, for next year, there is the survey that goes out to the full community. It'll be in the perspective, right, with a code to a digital survey specifically focusing on strategic planning. We do student focus groups in all 4 schools, more staff focus groups, those things. So there's additional layers of feedback in addition to our engagement, also around the foundational items of like mission, vision, values, that kind of thing. So that's all. Something to look forward to next year.
great. Anything else on the strategic plan?
Thank you for the feedback.
All right, let's talk legislative update.
Legislatively, it's getting to be really getting down to go time here for the biennium budget. There was information released in recent days about a apparent kind of compromise between the governor and the legislature. So John has been doing some preliminary analysis of what the numbers that we've heard, what would that mean for us? It's not great what they're talking about. It's definitely lower than what we were anticipating or hoping for, certainly on special ed reimbursement. We're hearing 33 and a third % or something like that when the ask was for 60. We were hoping for at least 40. So that's what's being talked about is much lower. The $325 per pupil is lower than anticipated. I reached out to Senator Kapiga and Representative Nalen today just to express, it's always important for them to know how one of their local districts may be affected. We said based on what's been reported in the media, we would expect between $200,000 and $400,000 in reductions we'd need to make for this next year's budget. And then approximately $1 million at the year after. that we'd have to make reductions from our operational expenses to be in budget based on what's out there. So we've communicated that information so that our representatives have that and understand how what's been proposed would affect us. And then the other thing that we've been very active on is there's reading legislation that's being proposed with mandates that we have been expressing concerns about as we've seen this coming down the pike with all kinds of mandates, including an element that's been discussed that I feel like is probably not going to go through, which to me is a very good thing, is retaining kids at third grade based on standardized test performance. The vast majority of educational research would show that retention is not helpful, it is harmful in terms of future achievement. So been reaching out and expressing those concerns in addition to kind of these one-size-fits-all approaches to curriculum and instruction for literacy, and we've had those discussions here before that are a concern that we are concerned with those approaches. So those things have been conveyed, and we do expect to hear something tomorrow, maybe with a little bit more detail on the biennium budget.
Anybody have any questions? Okay. Good, John?
Yeah, just from a process standpoint, the board calendar, the budget calendar that we operate on, you've adopted the preliminary budget based on assumptions that we've created from the information we had back in February, March, when it was developed. The practice has always been go to the annual meeting with that preliminary budget that we've approved. So that will be our publication. That will inform the board if there's any areas where we're going to be short or we're going to be anticipating greater revenues for the startup of the year. And then the revisions to comply with what's passed in the statute will be presented to you at that second board meeting in October, once we have the final pupil counts and the aid certification and our property value certification.
All right, I think that's everything. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?